Hi, I'm Ren Santivo,
I am Raimundo Bishera.
and today we're going to tackle about romantic artworks and artists.
Romantic artworks and artists. Romantic art focuses on emotions, feelings, moods of all kinds, including spirituality, imagination, mystery, and fervor. The subject matter varied widely, including landscape, religion, revolution, peace, and peaceful beauty. The brushworks from romantic art become looser.
Romanticism period 18th century. Romanticism, also known as the Romantic era, was an artistic, literary, musical, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe towards the end of the 18th century and in the most areas was at its peak in the approximate period from 18th to 1850.
So let's talk about romanticisms. Romanticisms refers to a movement in art, literature, and music during the early 19th centuries. Romanticisms is characterized by the five I's: imaginations, intuition, idealism, inspiration, and individuality.
So let's talk about technique. One technique employed by many romantic painters was the use of small close stroke of complementary colors to create brilliance and vivid visual effects. This technique was later adopted by the Impressionists who added their own interpretation of the method.
So we have five elements of romanticisms. First, interest in the common man and childhood. Second, strong sense and emotion and feelings. Third, end of nature. Fourth, celebration of the individuality. Fifth, importance of imaginations.
So, what is Romanticism? Romanticism is an artist who felt limited by neoclassicism, began creating more emotional artwork, giving rise to Romanticism. And it refers to reaction against neoclassicism, not interested in the importance of rules and perfection, and not particular style but an attitude characterized by color, emotion, passion, imagination, and dream-like quality. And Romanticism is named after the revival of interest in medieval stories like King Arthur, heroic stories referred to as romances, and also inspired by Africa and the Orient.
So now let's proceed to our romantic artists. Here are the most famous artists and their artworks during that era. Artist Francisco Goya, lifespan March 30, 746 to April 16, 1828. Nationality Spanish, masterpiece the 3rd of May 1880.
Francisco Coya rose to prominence in the artistic scene through his series of tapestry cartoons and became the court painter to the Spanish crown. He also been called the last great painter in whose art, truth, and observation were balanced and combined to form a faultless unity. Francisco Coya is the most famous romantic artist.
Other famous works: The Nude of Maha in 1880s, Saturn devouring his son 1823. Artist Jean-Louis Jodo Jericho, lifespan September 26, 791, death January 26, 1824. Nationality French, masterpiece The Rap of the Medusa 1819. Theodore cult had a huge impact on the history of French painting and trans went on dominate the world of Western art in the 19th century. Theodore cult is regarded as one of the painters of Romanticism, and they had a huge influence on the following generation of French artists, including Eugene Delacroix.
The Epsom Derby, 1821, and the Charging Chaucer, 1812. Artist Eugene Delacroix, lifespan April 26, 1798 to August 13, 1863. His nationality is French. One of his masterpieces is Liberty Leading the People in 1830.
Eugene Delacroix is widely regarded as the leader of the Romantic movement in France. Eugene Delacroix is the most famous French Romantic painter and greatly influenced later art movements like Impressionism and Symbolism. The other famous works of Eugene Delacroix. First, Death of Sardanapalus, 1827. Second, The Massacre of the Chios, 1824. So now, let's talk about Romantic landscape painting. So, landscape painting became popular due to the people's romantic admiration of nature. Two of the famous landscape artists in the Romantic period were Theodore Rousseau and Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot. The Romantic landscape was fretted with ideas about visual sensation and how feelings, perfect thought, and consequently how judgment follow from such feelings. Romantic sculpture was either about the human world or the natural world. Leading sculptors for each type were Rude and Barye, respectively. Just as Romantic painting can be divided into figure and landscape works, so can Romantic sculpture be divided into works that concern the human world and natural world. Here are the Romantic sculpture. Francois Rude. So, French sculptor best known for his social art, including public monuments such as the Departure of the Volunteers, popularly called La Marseillaise. Rude rejected the classical repose of late 18th and early 19th century French sculpture in favor of a dynamic emotional style and created many monuments that stirred the public for generations.
Artist Antonio Luis Barrier, lifespan September 24, 1795 to June 25, 1875. Nationality French, masterpiece Hercules sitting on a bull. Antonio Louis Barrier was a romantic French sculptor, most famous for his works An Animaler, a student of animals, his son, and student of was-known sculptor Alfred Barrier. Antonio Louis Barrier, the most famous animal sculptor of all time, studied anatomy of his subject by sketching residents of the Paris Zoo. Most of his works consist single animal or predator.
So now, let's move on to Neo-Gothic architecture. So Neo-Gothic architecture, also known as the Gothic Revival architecture or Victorian, is an architecture movement that began in the late 1740s in England. So Gothic Revival momentum grew in the early 19th century when increasingly serious and learned admirers of neo-Gothic styles sought to revive medieval Gothic architecture, in contrast to neoclassical style prevalent at the time.
Strawberry Hill House. So, Strawberry Hill House, often called simplified Strawberry Hill, is the Gothic revival villa that was built in Technigham, London, by Horace Walpole, 1717 to 1797. From 1749 onward, it is a type example of Strawberry Hill Gothic style architecture.
The Palace of Westminster. The history of the Palace of Westminster began in the Middle Ages when it was used as a royal residence. The English Parliament of the United Kingdom has met there since 1295. The palace burned down in 1834 and was replaced by the modern building. St. Patrick's Cathedral. So, the original of St. Patrick's Cathedral dates to the middle of the 19th century, to the year 1853, the year John Joseph Hodge, the Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York, announced his intention to build a larger or more modern cathedral to accommodate the city's rapidly growing Catholic population.